It's getting ready. Okay, we're live.
Well, good evening. A warm good evening to you all. I am Marty Lenz. I will be the acting chair for this evening. Diane Gunardis is otherwise occupied this evening. I would like to introduce the first and only item on our agenda tonight, the Owl's Head Park basketball courts at Colonial between 67th Street and Wakeman Place. The funding for this project was made possible by a capital grant allocation secured by Councilman Justin Brannan in the amount of $4 million in 2021. The scope of the work includes the basketball courts and the elimination of redundant fencing. I would like to introduce Mr. Mike Madden, the representative from the New York City Parks, who's present for the presentation tonight. So welcome, Mr. Madden.
Thank you, and thanks for having me. I'm excited to present this project.
A pleasure.
So let me just try to share my screen real quick. Is everyone able to see this okay?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Marty introduced the project with some of these details, but I'm Mike Madden, the designer for New York City Parks. I'm very excited to be presenting the Owl's Head basketball courts, which are called the Billy Lake courts. And the total budget for this project is $4 million, and the size of the project is about 3/4 of an acre. So there was a community input meeting held for this site and the playground in conjunction in October of 2020. And the main takeaways were things that are pretty clear if you've seen the site. It's the goal to repave and renovate the basketball courts and get a renovated adult fitness area in place. And from that, we develop our goals. So our goals for the site are to upgrade our active recreation spaces, improve our passive seating. We want a more welcoming entrance. And we also want to increase available shade and stormwater management capacity. The site, of course, is in Brooklyn and Bay Ridge. We're in the northeasternmost portion of Owl's Head Park. And when we look at the site, or any site for design, we tend to look at the surrounding land use. So here we can see it's largely residential, of course. And then to the north, we have transportation and utilities. To the west, we have the upper bay of the New York City Harbor. Our site is in an MS4 area. That's Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. That's the 4 S's in MS4, which basically means that our stormwater has a direct connection to our waterway. So we need to be especially cognizant of what we're doing with that stormwater, and we will be addressing that in our design. For our neighborhood context, we're quite close to Shore Road Park and Leif Erikson Park. We're kind of at the apex of those two kind of greenways in a sense. And moving into our overall site plan here, you can see in that kind of yellow ochre rectangle is the basketball courts. And just south of them, immediately adjacent, are the playgrounds, which were presented to this community board by my colleague, Aurora Davis. So we're right next to them. And this park is full of a lot of different programming and amenities. There's a skate park, a comfort station, a dog run even. So there's just quite a lot of things in this park, and these basketball courts will fit nicely with the rest of them. Without delving into too much detail on the history here, the site was originally an estate. That estate was willed to the city and renovated in the 30s and 40s. And in 1992 to 96, the playground and basketball courts were constructed. And then afterwards in 2004, the basketball courts were renamed in honor of 9/11 firefighter Billy Lake. Here are some historical photos just showing the original Bliss House, as well as some photos of the construction process. These topographical survey slides just kind of show the original layout once the site was redesigned by New York City Parks. You can see these kind of sinuous pathways meandering through the site. It kept its kind of a stately feel. And on the right side of the screen, you see the survey of the playground zoomed in. And when you zoom in, you can see the existing footprint reflected, even though that was originally a playground, it was then basketball courts. And we intend to keep that footprint for the basketball court renovation. The aerial slide here is really just to reorient us. So now north is to our right, Colonial Road is at the bottom of the page, and the playground is to the south on the left side of the screen. You can see even in the satellite image, the pavement in poor condition. So when we start to design a site, among our site visits, we also get a survey done, and then we analyze our existing conditions. Here we can see that there are 3 entrances to the park, or to the courts rather, currently. There's one main entrance, and then 2 entrances to the playground in its existing condition, one of which will be closed off in the proposed playground design. Within the 12-foot high and 7-foot high fencing surrounding the courts and adult fitness area are 4 high school regulation size basketball courts. There is seating at the south of the courts, in the center, and in the north area, and the seating in the north overlooks the adult fitness area. There are currently 2 sports light poles in good condition that illuminate these courts as well. So from here, we do a little bit of site analysis. Here, it's very straightforward. There's a lot of pavement in very poor condition that needs to be addressed. There is an adult fitness area with outdated equipment, and there's also some damaged fencing. One thing to note is there's quite a steep grade change between Colonial Road at the bottom of the page. There's about a 10-foot difference between Colonial Road and the courts, which means there could be a little bit of erosion on this hillside. So we're acutely aware of what could happen there. We want to make sure that we address any possible issues. We also conduct a tree inventory for every project with a certified arborist. In this case, we deemed only a handful of trees to be removed, and those were condition-based removals, not design-based removals, which is good news because this area has a lot of great healthy trees. For those who aren't familiar with the on-the-ground view of the site, here's the path adjacent to the basketball courts. On the right side of the screen, we have an owl statue that was installed in the '96 construction project. That owl is currently slated to go into the playground design. Here we have the entrance on the left side of the screen and a desire path leading into the courts. That redundant fencing that was mentioned by Marty earlier is visible here. There's a gap in it, and there was also a gap due to, I think, storm damage in the fence here. And that has caused this kind of opportunistic desire line. So we will be addressing that. Here's that adult fitness equipment that I mentioned earlier. It's still very actively used, and we plan to kind of maximize that space. There's a functional water fountain, and here we have that pavement heaving and cracking that we could see from that satellite image. Our basketball backstops, and that same damaged fencing one more time. So this site is a New York City Parks legacy park, which means it has a unique historic value among New York City parks. As such, we take a close look at the existing site materials, and we will be reflecting some of that in the character of the basketball courts, including this 1939 World's Fair bench, the hex block paving, just kind of maintaining a sensitivity and trying to keep cohesion throughout the different parts of the park. And from here, we go to the schematic plan. And what you can see probably pretty clear, similar in some ways to the original design, but let's say maybe a better version of that. So we have one new repaved entry in that center area of the courts, and we have one gated entry from the playground. From there, we have the 4 high school regulation size basketball courts. And those will be enhanced with some new courtside seating and new seating in the central median area, as well as on the south edge where the playground is. Towards the north side of the courts, we're going to be maximizing what we can do in this adult fitness area by changing the layout a bit into a semicircle. That fits better into a semicircle, of course, so we get a little bit more ground as well as the opportunity to install more equipment. And in order to help address some of our stormwater considerations, we're proposing 2 different rain gardens, as well as some permeable paving being used. So for the northern area of the courts, we have a rain garden that's essentially an expanded tree pit. So it'll be 3 tree pits that, or previously they were 3 tree pits, and they will be combined into one larger tree pit, which will be planted and be able to capture stormwater and filter it before it enters our water bodies. And we will have another rain garden just outside of the courts, which will perform a similar function. So with that in mind, we can talk about the fencing for the site, which is kind of important how we enclose a space. Based on feedback from this community board at the last meeting for the playground, we amended the proposed design for the playgrounds to have a 3-foot fence and to have a gated entry that can be closed and opened by community members as they see fit. We're also proposing a chain link fence at height that steps up to 12 feet behind our basketball courts. That will allow a nice open feel and kind of like a great sight lines in and out of the courts while making sure we capture any rogue basketballs that are flying around. To the north side of the courts on the right side of the screen, we have a 2'6" fence just surrounding that one kind of expanded tree pit planting bed. That slope that I mentioned on the hillside, we will be addressing strategically as needed. This won't be a carpet treatment everywhere, but we plan to do dense erosion control planting as we see fit based on our consultation with our arborists. And we will also be proposing some coir log, which is a roll of natural material that can be placed on a hillside to prevent silt and water from just rushing down the hill onto the courts and kind of keep them nice and tidy. For our site furnishings, it's a very simple palette and it reflects the character that I was mentioning before, as well as coordinates with the playground contract. So we will have those 1939 World's Fair benches in both backed and backless versions. We'll have a high-low drinking fountain with a bottle filler and excellent new backstops. For the adult fitness equipment, or the adult fitness area rather, in this new layout, we have an opportunity to replace some of the existing equipment with better versions, let's say, as well as adding new pieces that can provide a lot of exercise value in a small footprint. So the composite equipment that you can see on the top left of the screen, that's a great piece which has a lot of different exercise potential for full body workouts, but it kind of just sits in one unique location. And we'll also be incorporating plyometric boxes. Our two very accessible pieces are the chin-up bars and the parallel bars. And we will have a horizontal chin-up bench that can be used as a regular bench, but also for horizontal chin-ups, of course. And we'll have a body curl station and a sit-up and back extension. So really quite a wide range of options. I know a lot of people use this space simultaneously, so I think this might help ameliorate any waiting to use any set piece of equipment. Here's a little perspective view of the adult fitness area just beyond the basketball court. So you can see this paved threshold with some nice shade. And there are backless benches to allow fitness users as well as basketball players to sit beside whichever area they choose to use. For our pavements, we're keeping it quite simple, a nice muted palette with a dark green and sandstone color seal coat on our new asphalt. And we'll be using a permeable hexagonal block paver in the color French gray to reflect the rest of the site. And that will help manage our stormwater. And we'll be doing a tan safety surface. For our plant palette, we're sticking to entirely native plants as much as possible. So many of these plants that you see will be used in the rain garden and on the hillside for erosion control. But within the courts for shade, we're proposing these fruitless sweet gum. Fruitless is a great thing for a tree in a basketball court because they won't have fruit falling onto the paving. And for the rain gardens, we've selected a wide range of native plants that are adapted to both drought and damp conditions. So they can kind of handle quite a bit of different stresses and will be very hardy. This is our last slide, which is our sustainability analysis. I've mentioned many times at this point that we're managing our stormwater. So this is kind of one of the metrics we used, which is how permeable is the site at the end of design. So we're going from less than 1% permeable, meaning less than 1% of water that falls on those courts actually sinks into the ground in that location, to 13.5% or so, not including this exterior rain garden, so just within the courts. So I think that's quite a good shift for something that still has to be a big paved space. And with that, we're back at the schematic plan. So thank you so much, and I'm excited to hear your feedback.
Well, Mr. Madden, thank you very much for your very detailed and thoughtful presentation. I for one, found it quite illuminating. And thank you also for taking into consideration the comments offered by this committee about the playground and the fencing. I think that was really important to a lot of board members. So thank you for that. Your color
Absolutely.
palette, yeah, thank you. I think you've made some really wonderful choices. You know, your color palette and your materials are so tasteful, and it seems that you've put so much thought into many of the choices that you've made, and it looks like it's going to be absolutely fantastic.
Oh, thank you so much.
Not the least of which is your decision to retain the owl statue. We know how important CB10 feels about their stone artwork.
Yeah, it would be a shame if Owl's Head Park didn't have an owl statue, I think.
Agreed, agreed. I'd like to open it up to other members for questions or comments.
I think that this plan it certainly embraces what a family park looks like. There's something for everyone here, whether it's the basketball court, the adult playground, the places to sit and relax. I think that this will certainly be a destination for families. And as someone with a young family in Bay Ridge, you know, having a park like this is certainly something that is definitely needed. And we have so many beautiful parks within Community Board 10. This is just another enhancement and another addition to it. So thank you for your hard work in laying this out and also listening to the feedback of the Community Board in October to put this plan through.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'm very excited to see this change a bit because it definitely needed some attention.
We have any other committee members that would like to make a comment?
Yeah, I would. I actually grew up in this park, so it is a very big improvement. I just want to know, do you have a projected start date if we approve?
Yeah, so
Completion?
assuming everything goes smoothly in every phase of this work, right? So right now we're in the design phase, which technically began in January, which means the end of our design phase is next January. So January 22 is the end of design, which starts the procurement process, which can last up to a year. So that brings us to January 2023, potentially. It could be a little bit less. Sometimes procurement can be less, but I certainly can't promise that. And then the construction process is another full year of contract. So once the site is transferred to the contractors, they have control of it for a full year to construct the entire area. So that brings us to January 2024, but maybe sooner. It could be towards the end of 2023, but I really can't, I couldn't be so bold as to promise that.
No, okay, thank you. This is also going to be under renovation at the same time as the playground, then.
There will be some overlap. The playground will start sooner, a few months prior to that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I like the design. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good work.
Other questions, comments? I love the adult fitness area. I mean, I think we've seen during COVID how essential that is. So I'm so glad that that will be a resource for our community. And you've made some really good choices.
Oh, thank you. I see there's a Q&A section and I see something in there, but I'm not quite sure how to answer.
We have two members of the public who would like to speak.
Okay, let's open it up to any questions, comments from members of the public.
Okay. James Johnson, do you still want to speak, Jimmy? He had his hands up and I believe he put it down. Guess not.
Anyone else like to make a comment?
We have John Bazana. Let's see. Allowed to talk. Okay. Go ahead, John.
Okay, am I on now?
Yes.
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 Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. I have a couple of things on the design. First off, that 3-foot fence idea, that's interesting. I understand the openness and stuff. First of all, as someone who, you know, plays basketball there, you know, 3 days a week for the last 20 years, and I know the dynamics a little bit. You know, the place where the ball is not going to go over the fences and back of the backboard, on those angles, the ball will be going over the fence almost constantly. You know, I think that would be really inconvenient for the basketball. 3 feet is like very low over there. And you know, on the roadside, on the corner roadside there, I don't see any need for the 3-foot fence at all. You know, as you mentioned, there's that slope and there's that, you know, foresty area over there where, you know, the openness there isn't give you any openness. You're just going to have trees and, you know, stuff that, you know, you're just going to see a slope there as well. I would really recommend, at a minimum, no 3-foot fence on the Colonial Road side, where it's giving you no advantage of openness. But on the other side as well, you know, a fence that you could see through. I mean, you know, this basketball court is very, very functional. And of course, families go there once in a while in the mornings and stuff. And I have 3 kids and I raised all my kids there as well. But we're not in the basketball courts to, you know, have the scenic opening of the outside. And people don't really probably want to see inside the basketball court for that openness. That 3-foot fence, I would highly recommend not using that. That also goes into another comment I had last time. A very, very big problem with this court, you know, because it's in a park, obviously different from other, you know, courts in the neighborhood and such, is the leaves. The leaf buildup in this park is a problem. Actually, members of the community, you know, basketball players, and we get rid of most of the leaves because it's impossible to control. It's very dangerous. Slightly wet leaves, you know, very slippery and hazardous conditions. So when you talk about these trees and the need for shade, yeah, I mean, this is a very huge park. People are not coming to this basketball court, sitting in the middle of it with millions of teenagers, adults, very active, to relax in the shade in those courts, you know, in the middle of the court, especially. So, but if you're going to use trees, is there any way to use pine trees? We have a lot of pine trees in the park. This is a great place for the pine trees. I see you keeping all the existing trees around the edges. I was also going to suggest if those trees were having to be removed because of the construction, to bring in evergreens, pines, less. I know you said you have the ones that don't shed the fruit, which is nice, but just to keep that, anyway, to keep that consideration, leaves are a very big problem. I'm going to go real quick here. You mentioned the water fountain. A second water fountain, maybe by the fitness area, just to spread it out, would be wonderful. I know piping and all that might not be feasible, but that's a suggestion from a number of people in the park as well. And the lights that you mentioned, it's interesting. Those lights are so non-functional. One of them is totally obscured by trees. The one towards the corner, away from the children's playground, and the other one, it just does not give off enough lights to play, you know, when the sun goes down. I'm not even talking about midnight, you know, but a suggestion from a number of people at the park was if we could have, you know, more lighting where we could actually use the courts. Obviously, we play all year round, and we play in December. So, I mean, it's dark at 5 o'clock, you know, so the lighting would be a very good thing. I think that's it. That's all I had to say on that. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks, John, and thanks for the feedback. I can answer a couple of those questions if that works. Let me try to go in order. So the first topic was the variable height fencing. So going from the 3-foot to the 12-foot fence. That's a strategy we've employed in a lot of parks for the Parks Department with a lot of success. I hope I didn't misrepresent how open everything might feel, because there will be at least 30-foot spans of chain link fence at 12 feet behind every backstop. So I'm hoping that's enough to address some of those concerns. And the very edges of the courts where a ball might be rolling, say, the 3-foot fence will catch that. And
Right.
On the consideration for the hillside was actually to prevent balls from bouncing up that way and then having people have to clamber up the hill to retrieve a ball, or like if people are throwing a frisbee, what have you, whatever ends up back there. It was to avoid having people have to climb through that kind of eroding hillside and kind of keep everything within the court. And it serves a kind of double function, because you did bring up the leaves, and what a fence on that side will do is catch any excess leaves that aren't there. And I really appreciate the leaf comment, because that is definitely a maintenance concern, and we can bring that up with the borough and make sure that leaves are cleaned. But you can rest assured that we're doing a lot of pruning of the trees around the edges, and that will prevent some of those overhanging branches that are already in not good shape, which already tend to shed excess leaves. And to that same point about slipping, which is an excellent point also, new pavement will naturally have a way better friction coefficient. It will be naturally much more slip resistant than a 20-year-old paving. And I'm very confident that with maintenance and new paving, those slipping hazards will be mitigated.
Yeah, you're saying about the fence on the hillside.
Mhm.
It's going to prevent the leaves. The fence right now is 10 feet and at a minimum, I believe, and nothing gets over that fence. So no one has to go over that fence to retrieve anything because the fence is high. The 3-foot fence is what's going to make things go over. It's fine. I mean, especially on the other side, but the way the ball goes over fences is not behind the backboard because the backboard's there. It's like the backboard hits the backboard, goes the other direction. It's on the angles where, passes go straight and, people not like myself who have a good shot, they miss the ball completely and it goes over the fence. So it's actually going to be a lot of balls going over that fence all the time because of the 3-foot fence. And the hillside, it's like, because then you're going to have to go in there and crawl around in there to get it. On the other side, at least it's going to go over the fence and into the park area where you just go around and grab the ball. In any case, and I totally agree about the slippage. With the drainage around the edges, with the different tiles you're going to put there, it's going to make a huge difference. That's going to be wonderful. Yes.
And we can definitely look at the fencing and make sure we're making the right call there. I appreciate that feedback. Oh, and sorry, there was one point that you made that I did want to address just so I didn't miss anything. Pine trees are a great suggestion to be incorporated into an area outside of a court that gets a lot of sun, but unfortunately pine trees function a lot like deciduous trees in some ways, in the sense that they lose actually a lot of needles. They lose
right.
every 3 years, they lose that previous 3 years needles almost entirely over the course of that year. So while it isn't a grand fall like in the autumn, it is quite an issue also for detritus on courts. So I'm pretty confident with our choice for the deciduous trees because it'll mean maintenance only has to go out there and clean leaves once rather than, well, maybe not once, but over a season rather than throughout a whole year.
Is there any way to eliminate the trees inside the court entirely? I mean, I
don't know if we
understand.
can
I
do
love
that.
trees. Don't get me wrong. I love trees, but that is, those 6 trees within the fence area is probably causing 50% of the leaf problems within the court area, as opposed to ones on outside the fence area. I understand if you can't do that.
No, I mean, as a city, as an
Yeah.
agency, we're mandated to protect and keep trees whenever possible, and only to remove them when they're imminent threats to health and safety.
Yeah, but there's not 6 trees there right now. There's 2 trees there right now, if I'm remembering correctly, in the middle.
There are 6 honey locusts in the central area.
There are 6 in there. 6. Okay. There's 6 trees in the middle. Well, I guess I'm not paying attention then. Okay, so you're not adding trees there. Okay.
We're not adding trees to the middle, no.
Right. I don't want you removing trees. Okay. Thank you very much on that. And the lights, like I was saying, 4 lights are around, the park, if that was possible. And, that was the other thing that would be something.
Yeah, we can definitely look at the lighting. That's great feedback, especially about the light that's obscured by trees. That's something that we really rely on the community to tell us. So I'm glad we have that information.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Vanzana, thank you very much for your informative comments. I'm not a basketball player myself, so a lot of the points that you raised didn't occur to me, and that's why it's a really wonderful thing for community boards to bring together the designers with the people using the space. And Mr. Madden, it's so clear that you've put a lot of thought into many of these choices, and I think it's going to be really, really terrific. And I've learned a new word, friction coefficient. So
not quite a regular use word, but
no, but thank you for that. Are there other comments or questions from members of the public?
I don't see anything.
Okay, Well, I don't believe we have we are not meeting in quorum tonight,
No, we're
so
not.
we will not be taking a vote. And so
Does this mean that, will you share this with the rest of the committee and do a vote?
We will take a vote at our board meeting on Monday. We will get a
Okay.
motion from the floor. Can I ask that we please get the presentation tomorrow? Can we
Of
get a
course.
copy of this presentation? It would be very helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions?
No, well, it seems our work here is done. Thank you
Yes.
very much, Mr. Madden and to Ms. Kramer and everyone else, Mr. Surratt, and everyone here from Parks for your detailed, thoughtful, and quite beautiful presentation. Thank you to the committee members and the members of the public for your participation. And I wish you all a pleasant evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank
very
you.
much.
And thank you, Marty, for stepping up to cover for our Parks Committee Chair.
My pleasure. Thank you very
appreciate it.
much, Dorothy. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Good night, all.
Thank you. Have a
Good
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 night.
night. Thank you.
Bye-bye.